The office was already awake before the sun showed up. People rushed in with coffee cups in their hands, some yawning, some already typing loudly on their keyboards. It was one of those mornings when everyone seemed a little tense because the CEO was visiting each department that day. Whenever he came around, people tried to appear more focused, more serious, more organized than usual. Down the hallway, a janitor was quietly doing his routine work. He moved slowly, gently pushing his cleaning cart from one room to another. Most employees passed by him every day without noticing much. He was one of those people everyone saw, but never really looked at. He did his job silently, never complained, and rarely spoke unless someone greeted him first. He always responded politely, usually with a small smile before returning to his work. The CEO didn't know much about him. Honestly, almost no one did. In a big company like this, people stayed in their own circles. Managers spent time with managers, analysts with analysts, and so on. The janitor was simply part of the background, someone who kept the place clean so everyone else could keep the company running. On that particular morning, the CEO was heading toward a conference room for an early meeting with 2 foreign visitors. These visitors were important for a possible partnership, and the CEO wanted everything to go smoothly. As he walked through the hallway, he noticed a bit of confusion happening near the reception area. The 2 visitors looked lost and unsure about where to go. They tried speaking to the receptionist, who struggled to understand them because they didn't speak English well. The CEO was about to step in when something surprising happened. The janitor, who had been dusting a nearby shelf, walked calmly toward the visitors. He spoke a few words in their language with perfect pronunciation. The visitors' faces lit up immediately. Their stress disappeared within seconds, replaced by relief and gratitude. The receptionist stared at the janitor, unsure how he suddenly became the center of attention. The CEO stopped walking. He wasn't sure if he heard correctly. He knew the janitor spoke English. But this? He stayed silent and watched closely. The janitor continued speaking with the visitors, guiding them through the building in their own language. The CEO noticed how smoothly he switched between phrases, how confidently he spoke, and how comfortable the visitors became. The conversation flowed naturally, as if he had been doing this every day, after helping them find the right room. The janitor returned to his cart and continued cleaning like nothing unusual had happened. For him, it seemed like a simple moment, just helping someone who needed a little guidance. But for everyone who saw it, it was far from simple. A few minutes later, the CEO approached him. Instead of calling him from a distance, he walked right up to him and spoke politely. "Excuse me," he said, hoping to get his attention without sounding intimidating. The janitor looked up with a humble expression, unsure why the CEO was talking to him directly. "Yes, sir. What language were you speaking just now?" the CEO asked carefully. "Oh," the janitor replied, almost shyly. "That was just one of the languages I know." "One," the CEO repeated with clear surprise. "How many languages do you know?" The janitor hesitated for a moment, as if wondering whether he should say the real number. "9, sir," he answered softly. "I can speak 9. The CEO blinked. For a moment, he wondered if he misheard. "9 languages?" he said again, slower this time. "Yes," the janitor replied. His voice wasn't proud or boastful, it was humble, almost apologetic. Like he hoped it wouldn't sound like he was showing off. The CEO didn't know what to say next. He looked at the janitor with fresh eyes, seeing someone completely different from who he thought he was. He had assumed the janitor came from a simple background, maybe limited education, maybe fewer opportunities. That's how most people unconsciously thought about him. But here he was, someone who could speak 9 languages with ease. The CEO wasn't the only one who heard the conversation. A couple of employees who were walking by slowed their steps, pretending to check their phones while listening. One of them whispered to another, "Did he just say 9?" The other nodded silently, equally shocked. For years, this janitor had been working quietly in the background, and no one had any idea he carried such a rare and valuable skill. The CEO decided not to ask. Too many questions in the hallway. He didn't want to make the janitor uncomfortable, and he also didn't want to attract too much attention, but he couldn't ignore what he had witnessed. "Thank you for helping our guests," the CEO said sincerely. You handled it very well. It was nothing, sir, the janitor replied. They just needed directions. But the CEO knew it was far more than that. He watched the janitor return to his work, lifting a trash bag and tying it neatly before placing it in the bin. There was something deeply grounded about him, someone who did his job with care. Even if the world hardly noticed, the CEO left for his meeting, but his mind wasn't fully focused. During the presentation with the foreign visitors, he kept remembering the way the janitor had spoken. It wasn't just fluency, it was ease, confidence, and genuine understanding of the language. Many people study languages for years and still struggle. But this man had a natural flow in 9 different languages. Throughout the morning, whispers spread across the office. Someone from the reception area had told someone from human resources, who then mentioned it to another manager. Soon, almost everyone had heard at least some version of the story. The quiet janitor could speak 9 languages. Each time the story passed from one person to another, the surprise grew. Some people found it inspiring, while others wondered why someone with such talent would work as a janitor. A few even felt guilty for never noticing him, never stopping to say more than a quick good morning. Meanwhile, the janitor kept doing his work just like any other day. He didn't understand why people were suddenly looking at him differently. Some smiled more warmly, some greeted him first, some stared in quiet curiosity. He didn't know what rumors had spread, but he felt something had changed in the air around him by early afternoon. The CEO asked him if he'd be willing to step into his office for a short conversation. The janitor became nervous. Usually, people got called to the CEO's office for serious matters. He wondered if he had accidentally broken some rule without knowing. As he walked toward the CEO's door, he kept thinking about what might happen. He hoped he wouldn't lose his job for speaking to visitors without being asked. He hoped he didn't get the receptionist in trouble. He hoped this wasn't something that would bring unnecessary attention or problems. But the CEO wasn't upset at all. If anything, he was excited and impressed in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. The janitor stepped inside slowly and stood near the chair, waiting for the CEO to speak first. "Please, sit down," the CEO said kindly. His tone wasn't formal or cold. It was gentle, almost friendly. The janitor sat, but his hands were still a little tense. The CEO leaned forward slightly. "I want to know more about you," he said honestly. "I've seen you here for years, working quietly, doing your job well. But today I saw something I never expected. I want to understand how you learned all those languages." The janitor looked down for a moment, unsure where to begin. And in that moment, without either of them realizing it yet, the story that would surprise the entire office had only just begun. The janitor sat across from the CEO, unsure of what would happen next. He had never been inside the CEO's office before. The room felt bigger than it looked from outside, with large windows, quiet air, and shelves filled with awards and books. It was a place where important decisions were made, and he felt a little out of place sitting there in his simple uniform. The CEO could sense his nervousness. He didn't want the conversation to feel like an interrogation. He wanted it to feel comfortable. So he began with a small smile and asked gently, "How are you feeling?" "I hope I didn't worry you by calling you here." The janitor shook his head a little. "I'm fine, sir. I wasn't expecting this." Well, the CEO replied, "I wasn't expecting what I saw this morning either." The janitor lowered his eyes, almost embarrassed. "I didn't mean to make a scene. They just needed help. You didn't make a scene," the CEO said quickly. "You helped them in a way none of us could. And that's something I want to understand better." There was a short moment of silence as the CEO leaned back slightly, giving the janitor space to speak. "Tell me," he continued, "how did you learn so many languages? It's not something many people can do." The janitor took a quiet breath. He had never shared his full story with anyone at work. Most of the time, people were too busy, too distracted, or simply uninterested in the life of a janitor. But here was the CEO, looking at him not as a cleaner, but as a human being with a story worth hearing. "I grew up moving from country to country," the janitor began softly. "My family didn't have much, and we didn't have a permanent home. My father worked different jobs, and sometimes those jobs took us far away." The CEO listened carefully, his expression gentle and focused. "In one place, the janitor continued. I had to learn the local language to make friends or just understand my teachers. Then we moved again, and I had to learn another one. After a while, learning languages became part of my life. I didn't see it as something special. It was just necessary. He smiled faintly as he remembered those early years days when he sat with children who spoke words he had never heard before, trying to copy their sounds, their accents. Back then, he didn't realize he was building a talent that would surprise people later in life. He was only trying to survive, trying to adjust. The CEO nodded slowly, impressed by the simplicity of the explanation. So you learned because you had to, he said. Yes, the janitor replied. It wasn't a plan. It just happened over time. What about school? The CEO asked. Did you study languages there too? Sometimes, the janitor said. When we stayed in one place long enough, I went to school. Other times, I couldn't because we had to move again. I didn't have a stable education, but I picked up whatever I could. I liked listening to how people spoke. I liked understanding what they meant even when I didn't know all the words. There was another pause. The CEO could tell the janitor was trying to stay humble, not wanting to make it sound like his life had been harder than anyone else's. But the truth was clear. This man had lived through challenges that most people in the office couldn't imagine. The CEO leaned forward. And now, here you are, working as a janitor. With all that talent, why didn't you go for a different job? Something where your skills could be used. The question wasn't meant to judge. It came from genuine curiosity. The janitor understood that. He took a moment before answering. Life doesn't always follow our wishes, he said quietly. When I came to this country, things were difficult. I couldn't afford further education. I needed a job quickly. This company had an opening for cleaning staff, and I took it because I needed the income. It wasn't about choosing what I wanted. It was about doing what I had to. His voice remained calm, but there was a hint of sadness behind it. Not bitterness, just reality. I didn't mind the work, he added. It's honest work. It helped me pay rent, buy food, and support my family back home. So I stayed. I didn't feel ashamed. The CEO respected that deeply. Too often, people judged a job by its name, not by the effort behind it. But here was a man who carried no shame at all. Even though he had every reason to feel disappointed by the way the world had overlooked him. I'm sorry the company never discovered your abilities before now, the CEO said sincerely. It's our fault that we never tried to know you better. The janitor quickly shook his head. No, it's not your fault. I never talked about it. I didn't think anyone would care. Everyone here is busy. Everyone has their own responsibilities. But still, the CEO insisted softly. We should have seen you as more than just a worker in the hallway. The janitor didn't argue. He simply gave a small nod. The CEO took a deep breath and changed the direction of the conversation. Let me ask you something else, he said. Do you still practice all those languages? Yes, the janitor replied. I try to keep them fresh. I read things online sometimes. I watch videos in different languages. I like keeping my mind active, and you speak 9 fluently. The CEO asked again, still amazed. Yes, he said. Some more fluently than others, but I can manage pretty well. The CEO couldn't help smiling. It wasn't a smile of disbelief anymore. It was admiration. Just then, someone knocked on the office door. A staff member entered to hand the CEO some documents, but when she saw the janitor sitting there, she paused, surprised. She didn't say anything, but the look on her face showed she was curious. The CEO thanked her, and she left, closing the door behind her. People are talking, the janitor said quietly. I can feel it. They are, the CEO admitted honestly. But don't worry. They're not talking in a bad way. They're impressed. They're respecting you. Sometimes people need a moment like this to open their eyes. The janitor seemed unsure how to respond, so he simply looked down at his hands. The CEO softened his voice. I want to ask you something important, he said. Do you like working here? Yes, the janitor replied quickly. The environment is good. Most people are polite. The job is stable. But does it make you happy? The CEO asked. The janitor hesitated this time. Happiness was a complicated topic. It makes life manageable, he finally said. I can support myself. I can help my family. I can sleep peacefully at night. That is enough. The CEO respected that answer, but he could also sense the unspoken part, the part that wondered what life could have been if circumstances had been kinder. I want you to know something, the CEO said carefully. What you did today mattered more than you think. You helped us create a connection with people who might become important partners. You made them feel welcome in a way none of us could, and that is valuable. The janitor didn't know what to say. He had never been praised like this by someone of such high position. He felt his throat tighten slightly, but he forced a small smile. I just did what I could, he said. And that, the CEO replied, is exactly why it means so much. The office outside continued buzzing with activity. People moved through the hallways, but inside this room, time felt slower, more thoughtful. Two people from completely different levels of the company sat facing each other. Realizing how little they truly knew about each other's world, the CEO finally ended the conversation with a warm tone. I would like to talk to you again soon, he said. There are things I want to think about, but for now, you can go back to your work. And thank you for sharing your story with me. The janitor stood up slowly. He still looked slightly overwhelmed, but there was also relief in his eyes. Thank you for listening, sir, he said. As he walked out of the office, he felt lighter, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the first time someone had taken his story seriously. Maybe it was the first time he felt seen, as he returned to his cleaning cart and continued his work. People watched him with curiosity and even respect, but he didn't know that this was only the beginning. The CEO had already started thinking of ways to use his unique skills for something, greater, something that might change the janitor's life forever. And while the janitor pushed his cart down the hallway, quietly doing the same tasks he had done for years, he had no idea that a major turning point in his life was just around the corner. The next few days in the office felt different, even though nothing had officially changed. People still came in with their laptops, their earphones, their files. Meetings still happened. Phones still rang. But the atmosphere had a quiet buzz. It's like something was building up in the background. The janitor tried to continue his routine as normally as possible. He swept floors, wiped desks, emptied bins, and kept the hallways clean, just like he always had. But now people greeted him more warmly. Some smiled at him as they passed by. Some asked how his day was going. A few even tried saying hello in different languages, just to see if he'd respond in the same one. It was strange for him. He wasn't used to attention. For years, he had blended into the background. Now, suddenly, he was the person everyone whispered about. He didn't know that behind the scenes, something much bigger was being discussed in the CEO's meetings. The company had been chasing a national partnership for months. It was important. Maybe one of the most important deals the company had attempted in years. But recently, communication issues had started causing tension. Emails got misunderstood. Video calls became awkward. Some messages got lost in translation. And the foreign partners, though polite, begun to show frustration. Then one afternoon, everything reached a breaking point. A message came in from the foreign company asking for an urgent meeting. They expressed concerns and hinted that they were considering stepping back from the negotiation. The CEO read the message twice, feeling a heavy pressure settle in his chest. If this deal collapsed, the company would suffer. People's jobs could be affected. Months of planning would go to waste. He called an emergency meeting with his managers. They gathered around the table, worried expressions on their faces. They discussed how to handle the situation, how to fix the communication problems, how to save the partnership. But no one had a clear solution. After a long and stressful discussion, the CEO leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. He felt tired, frustrated, and cornered. And then, almost suddenly, a thought came to him, simple, yet powerful: the janitor. He remembered how naturally the janitor spoke the visitor's language. He remembered the fluency, the confidence, the ease. It wasn't just about speaking words. It was about building trust. And right now, the deal needed trust more than anything. The CEO sat up straight, surprising the managers. "I have an idea," he said. They listened closely as he explained what he had seen that morning, what the janitor could do, and why he believed the janitor might be the key to fixing the communication gap. Some managers looked doubtful. Not disrespectful, just uncertain. They had never seen a janitor sit in a high-level meeting. They wondered if he would feel comfortable or if the partners would take it seriously. But the CEO was firm. "He has a skill none of us have," he said. "And right now, we need him." That afternoon, the CEO found the janitor in one of the hallways, quietly mopping the floor. When the janitor saw him, he paused immediately, thinking something serious had happened. "Can we talk for a moment?" the CEO asked. "Of course, sir," he replied, stepping aside. The CEO explained the situation in simple words. He didn't hide the seriousness of the problem. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He simply told the truth. The company was in trouble, communication had broken down, and the partnership was on the edge of falling apart. The janitor listened carefully, trying to understand why he was being told all this. Then the CEO said the words that surprised him. "I want you to join our meeting tomorrow. I need your help." The janitor froze for a moment. "Me?" he asked softly, almost in disbelief. "In the meeting?" "Yes," the CEO said confidently. "You speak their language better than anyone here. You can help us understand them, and help them understand us. I know it's unusual, but I believe you're the best person for this." The janitor didn't answer immediately. His hands tightened around the mop handle. "Sir, I'm not trained for meetings like that. I don't know business terms. I don't want to say something wrong." The CEO smiled gently. "You don't need to know everything. You just need to help us communicate clearly. I will handle the business side. You just be yourself." The janitor's heart beat faster. He had never imagined being invited to sit at the same table as high-level executives. He wasn't sure if he belonged there. He wasn't sure if he was capable. "I don't want to disappoint you," he said quietly. "You won't," the CEO replied. "You've already proved that." After a long pause, the janitor finally nodded. "I'll try my best." "Thank you," the CEO said. "That's all I need." When the janitor went home that night, he could barely sleep. He kept thinking about the meeting, the people who would be there, and the pressure he would feel. He felt nervous, excited, and scared all at once. He practiced a few phrases in his head just to settle his mind. The next morning, the office was unusually tense. Everyone knew the meeting was important. Some employees whispered that the janitor had been invited to help. Others didn't fully believe it until they saw him walking toward the conference room with the CEO beside him. Inside the room, some managers greeted him politely, but with visible curiosity. They weren't sure how the meeting would go, but they trusted the CEO's decision. Soon, the foreign partners joined the video call. Their faces appeared on the large screen, serious, polite, but clearly stressed. The CEO greeted them warmly, but the atmosphere remained stiff. Then the CEO turned to the janitor and gave him a small nod. The janitor took a deep breath and spoke. The moment he began talking in their language, everything shifted. The tension softened. The partners leaned in closer, surprised but pleased. They responded quickly, and the janitor translated their words with accuracy and calmness. He didn't stumble. He didn't hesitate. He spoke with a kind of natural flow that made everyone in the room silently watch in awe as the conversation grew longer. The partners' expressions changed. They smiled. They laughed lightly at one point. They explained their concerns in detail, and the janitor translated everything smoothly. The CEO explained the company's side, and the janitor made sure nothing was misunderstood. For the first time in weeks, the conversation was clear. There was no confusion, no mistranslation, no frustration. Just honest communication. One of the partners asked who the interpreter was. The CEO smiled and said, "He's a valued member of our team." The janitor felt his cheeks warm, but he kept his focus. By the end of the meeting, the partners agreed to continue the deal. They even complimented the interpreter several times, saying he made the whole discussion easier and more meaningful. When the call ended, the room stayed silent for a moment. Then suddenly, people began clapping, not gentle claps, real applause. Loud, proud, grateful applause. The janitor blinked in surprise, unsure what to do. He wasn't used to people clapping for him. He had spent years cleaning the same hallways quietly, without anyone paying attention. Now he stood in the middle of a room full of executives who were cheering because he had saved a major deal. The CEO walked over to him, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said softly, "You did more than help. You changed everything." The janitor looked down, overwhelmed. "I just translated," he said. "No," the CEO replied. "You made connection possible." And that's something many people spend their whole lives trying to do. As the employees walked out of the room, many of them stopped to shake his hand or thank him personally. Some smiled. Some nodded with respect. It felt unreal to him for the rest of the day. He pushed his cleaning cart down the hallways just like he always did, but everyone who saw him now saw something different. Not just a janitor, someone with a rare gift that had just saved the company's future. And even though he returned to his regular uniform and simple tasks, one thing was clear: his life was already beginning to change in ways he had never imagined. The morning after the big meeting, the office atmosphere felt unusually warm. People greeted each other with lighter smiles. Even those who normally rushed straight to their desks paused to chat for a moment. It was as if the company had taken a breath of fresh air. After weeks of tension, and at the center of that quiet shift was the janitor, who came in at the same time as always, wearing the same uniform he'd worn for years. He walked through the hallway with his usual humble steps, pushing his cleaning cart, not expecting anything special. But the moment people saw him, they treated him differently. One employee offered him a cup of tea. Another said, "Good to see you," with genuine warmth. A few nodded respectfully as he walked past them. It wasn't a loud kind of attention. It was soft, gentle, and full of appreciation. He felt shy, almost overwhelmed. He didn't like being the center of anything. He never needed attention. But he couldn't deny that it felt good to be seen as a human being rather than a shadow in the background. Around mid-morning, he received a message from the CEO asking him to stop by the office when he had a moment. The janitor nodded to himself and slowly made his way there after finishing a task. He knocked lightly, and the CEO opened the door almost immediately, as if he had been waiting. "Come in," the CEO said warmly. The janitor stepped inside, still unsure if he should sit or stand. The CEO smiled and gestured to a chair. "Please have a seat." Once he settled down, the CEO began speaking in a clear but gentle tone. "Yesterday was important. More important than most people will ever know, and it would not have gone that well without you." The janitor looked down modestly. "I only helped with translation." "You did much more than that," the CEO replied. "You helped rebuild trust. You helped us keep the partnership alive." And the partner specifically mentioned that they appreciated how respectfully and naturally you communicated with them. The janitor felt his face warm slightly. He didn't know how to respond to praise. He wasn't used to it. He preferred quiet work, where results spoke for themselves. The CEO leaned forward. "I've been thinking about your future here. I believe you deserve opportunities that match your abilities, not just your current role." The janitor slowly lifted his eyes, unsure what the CEO meant. "I want to offer you a new position," the CEO said. "A position that uses your language skills. You would help with communication, translation, and international support. It would be a real step up in the company." The janitor blinked. For a moment, he wondered if he had heard correctly. "A new position?" he repeated softly. "But I've only worked as a janitor. I don't know how to do office jobs." "You'll learn," the CEO said confidently. "I'll make sure you receive proper training. We will guide you. What matters most? Your language ability you already have. And that is something people cannot teach easily. You earned this." The janitor sat quietly, taking it all in. His heart thumped gently in his chest. 1,000 thoughts ran through his mind. He remembered the long years of doing simple, unnoticed work. He remembered the nights he spent worrying about bills, the days he spent feeling unseen. And now, suddenly, his life was changing right in front of him. "I don't want to disappoint you," he said again. Because it was his biggest fear. You won't, the CEO assured him. You've already proven that. There was a long pause. The janitor breathed slowly, gathering courage. Finally, he nodded. If you believe I can do it, then I'll try my best. The CEO smiled with genuine relief. Good. Then let's begin this new chapter. When the janitor left the office, his steps felt lighter. But at the same time, he felt a strange pressure. Not a bad pressure, more like a responsibility he had never carried before. People were counting on him now. They believed in him even before he believed in himself. Later that day, the CEO invited him to a small gathering with the managers. It wasn't a big event, just a simple, informal meeting in a lounge area. The managers were friendly and supportive. Some congratulated him. Some thanked him again for his help. One manager even joked, "I wish I could learn languages as easily as you." The janitor laughed softly. It was the first time he felt comfortable enough to laugh around them. After the gathering, he met with the training department. They explained what his new role would involve. He would help translate documents, assist during international meetings, support communication with partners, and sometimes even train other staff on how to handle multilingual communication. It sounded like a lot, but also meaningful. The kind of work that made him feel useful in a new way. For the first time in many years, he felt excited about his future. The following week, the office arranged a small farewell moment for him, not because he was leaving the company, but because he was leaving his janitor role. A few people gathered around, clapping lightly and wishing him luck. Some of the cleaning staff hugged him proudly, telling him to never forget where he started. He promised he wouldn't. He returned the uniform with care, folding it neatly one last time. It had carried many years of quiet effort. He respected it deeply. Then he put on a simple button-up shirt the training department had given him, along with an access card that had his name printed under a new title. When he walked into the office in that new shirt, some employees barely recognized him at first, but then their faces lit up. They congratulated him again. Some said they felt inspired seeing someone rise through effort and kindness rather than position. The janitor, no longer a janitor, now felt shy but grateful. His first day in the new role wasn't perfect. He was nervous during a meeting. He mixed up a file folder. He accidentally pressed the wrong button during a presentation practice. But everyone reassured him that mistakes were normal, especially on the first day. And he learned quickly. The CEO checked on him often, making sure he had everything he needed. Take it one step at a time, he told him. Your skills will carry you. Day by day, he grew more confident. His translations became smoother. His presence in meetings became more natural. He even helped solve a misunderstanding. Between departments that were using different terms for the same arrangements, word spread to the foreign partners too. They requested him specifically when scheduling video calls. They said conversations felt more comfortable with him there. They appreciated his calm way of speaking, his patient approach, and his respect for their culture. Soon he became known in the company as the person who connected people, someone who brought clarity where there was confusion, someone who built bridges without even trying to. One afternoon, the CEO stopped by his new desk. "How are you settling in?" he asked. He smiled. "I'm learning every day." CEO nodded with satisfaction. "That's all I hoped for." For a moment, they both looked around the office. The janitor turned staff member saw employees working, smiling, communicating with ease. He remembered his first days in the building, unnoticed and quiet, sweeping floors with tired hands. And he realized something important. It wasn't just his role. That had changed. He had changed. Too. He had stepped into a future he never dared to imagine. Not because someone gave it to him, but because someone finally saw who he truly was, and because he was brave enough to take that step. Later that evening, as he walked out of the building, the setting sun painted the sky in soft orange. He looked up, feeling the cool air on his face. His life still had challenges. He still had responsibilities. He still had family to support. But he also had hope now, a new kind of hope he hadn't felt in years. A security guard at the exit smiled at him and said, "Big changes, huh?" He laughed gently. Yes, big changes. As he walked toward the bus stop, he thought about the long journey that had brought him here, from a boy traveling across countries, learning languages out of necessity, to a man who swept floors quietly, to someone now helping shape international ties for a major company. His story was not a fairy tale. It was real, built from struggle, humility, and unexpected moments. And though he didn't know what would happen next, he walked forward with confidence, ready for whatever came his way, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't just being seen, he was being valued.